Welcome back, everyone, to Inside Texas Baseball here in a rainy Austin, Texas. I'm your host, as always, Evan Beeth, joined by Nash Talks Texas. Uh, this is a new one for us because we've been doing this show for less than a year, and it's been pretty positive, all things considered, Nash. But I don't really know how you can take any positives from what happened this weekend. Arkansas just gave Texas the B2A a 3-0 take a sweep in Fayetteville, and it wasn't particularly close for a lot of these games, Nash. What was your immediate reaction to some of like the Friday game? What were you thinking going after that game? Where was your head at as we headed into the rest of the weekend?
Friday, it was just, hey, get back out there. Let's take the series. We got our ass kicked, for lack of better words, right? Uh, and going back out there, competing. I like to see the boys compete how they did. Obviously, the game kind of got away from it. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but uh, yeah, I mean everything was still on the table after Friday, and it really did also feel like that too. But
Mhm.
at the same time, that's sometimes baseball. Baseball's a cruel mistress, man. It's a cruel sport.
And unfortunately for some of you guys as well, the spring practice sale is no longer around. We don't have any big things to promote, but of course, Inside Texas is the place to go for all of your Texas football, baseball, and basketball needs. We are always writing about Texas baseball over on there, whether it be good or bad. Some of our fans don't like my anti-superstitious writing there, but listen, it's still going to happen. I got a report, so we'll jump right into game one, which actually I got that wrong. It was a Thursday game in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Texas goes over to face Zach Root, who I think he was the number one transfer pitcher in the portal this last year from ECU. Comes over to Arkansas. It's a big get for them. He struggled at times a little bit, especially his last three series, where Arkansas had dropped a lot of series before this matchup, which is part of why they showed up so hot. Root hadn't been pitching so well, but man, he gave Arkansas some of the best 8 innings of pitching that we've seen on Texas's side or against them all year. One of the best performances the SEC has seen this year. And Texas came up or hit just the ball just two times. It was bottom of the order. I think it was Rodriguez and Williams too, or maybe Duplantier. I forgot exactly who, but it was just Texas got completely shut down, and it was the game where their pitching did not great, but at least they after Ruger Riojas' kind of explosion in the fourth, that they subdued the rest of the Arkansas order. But it was a really tough one for the Bats. Probably their worst game. I have to give a stat about that, Nash, about just how bad that the hitting was.
Yeah, unfortunately, that Saturday game that we had a .071 batting average, which we've only had four batting averages that are .71 or lower. The lowest that we've had in the last in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, the lowest that we've gone to is .69, and the first time that we had the .69 in the last 5 years was against Arkansas in the Globe Life tournament that they got going on up there. So obviously not, Arkansas seems to have a little bit of a Texas number with two of the four worst batting averages games in the last 5 years. So it is what it is, but you got to just move on.
Well, this is less of a baseball take, but it feels like for all the success Texas has had entering the SEC in a lot of their sports, in all their major four, five, six sports, there's still that one team who's holding them back from being at the very top. It feels like in football, it's obviously the Georgia team. Basketball, they were themselves held them back, but in women's basketball, South Carolina and Don Staley have really been giving them the business for lack of a better term. And of course, baseball and softball. Softball was already Oklahoma, but baseball now Arkansas is really that team that feels like Texas, they might have their number a little bit. So it may not be the last time these two teams face this year, but Root is the best pitcher in this matchup if they are facing, and he really showed that on Friday. Really, not much to talk about this game apart from I guess my take on it would be that if there's any one game where Texas has felt all season that they needed Max Ballou and now Jared Spencer, it was this Friday game because no Spencer coming on Friday. Riojas maybe a week late to that struggle. He was really good against A&M, but it was his first time doing that Friday start. It didn't feel like it was really necessary, or excuse me, really ready to do that today and or on Friday and Thursday. I keep messing up, and that showed up. I think a lot in those first 3-4 innings when the Razorbacks just pounced on him, and then Texas didn't have Ballou or really a lot of top of the order batting to get them out of that hole and get them out of that rut.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the Ruger Riojas kind of had he just I don't I don't want to call it a bad day. Like he didn't look bad out there, right? It was just more or less they were just hitting balls and the balls were flying far at just really bad points.
Mhm.
Even if they were all just solo shots. I mean, he's walking dudes with two strikes, and that's the thing that kills you is when you got 2 strikes on a guy, you can't walk people. And we just, I mean, this also is an all weekend long thing, and we'll talk more about it. But I mean, Arkansas, they just kept getting walks, and then
Yeah.
every single time they walked, the next guy hits a home run, and it was just a rinse and repeat thing all weekend. But one guy that really stood out to me, and it, it's overshadowed because the game is already at a 9-0 lead, right? But Cody Howard came in and pitched one
He
hell
had
of
a
a game.
really good game.
I mean, he
Yeah.
he only gave up 1 hit through 3.1 innings pitched. Bryce Navarre, he got out there too. 1 inning pitch, no hits. I mean, look, it's not like they had already put in their backups and all that stuff. I mean, it's honestly kind of impressive considering that, hey, this is a team that was hitting the ball very well that day. And so they were seeing the ball well. They were,
Yeah, they were
getting
already
good
on.
hits. And Cody Howard was able to shut them down. So obviously you kind of, I mean, you're never going to start Cody Howard over Ruger Rojas, but hindsight 2020, you're like, oh man, we should have started that guy
Well, at least it makes you confident that Howard can pitch in the SEC, which he seemed like the next guy to
or
a
the
lot of
tournament.
pitching in
Yeah.
college. Yeah, yeah, and a lot of baseball, college baseball is just can this week we get one new guy out of the bullpen, and Texas has already got a wealth of riches in the bullpen. But yeah, this weekend, 31 free passes for Texas pitching between hit by pitches and walks. The hit by pitches and walks really showed up the next day. That walking wasn't as terrible for Riojas, and yeah, like we said, a little bit of the power numbers crept up there for Arkansas. But yeah, just a big shock as Texas gets pretty much blown out in that Thursday game. Wasn't particularly close, but you can move on to the weekend. You get to your next games. And we said before this that, hey, this could be a series loss. It felt like there was a chance that Friday something bad happens and Texas drops the game. But take one more of those games and you're good. And that's what Texas was shooting for by obviously Saturday. But even Friday, I was saying like, let's just win one. Let's take a game. And so Friday comes around. You're facing their number 2, Gage Wood, who had 4 innings pitched, but it was really their bullpen between Gakel, I think his name is, and Jimenez, who got to Texas. Luke Harrison settled down after that second inning. I didn't think he had a bad outing. I didn't think Duplantier, Saunier, Howard, or anything like that, or sorry, excuse me, Walker were particularly bad. It was just the bats were just a little bit better for Arkansas. There wasn't a lot of timely hitting for Texas. A lot of free passes, like you said, it was 9 walks and 5 hit by pitches for Texas. But that timely hitting is what I'm coming back to because there's at least 2 or 3 different spots where Texas either had a runner in scoring position or 2 on or both, and they just weren't coming up. And this feels different to what's been going on the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that second inning. It's just kind of almost the epitome of the weekend. And really, I mean, if you look at it on game 2, I'm just going to say game 2 instead of saying Friday or Saturday
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
right.
throwing me off. But so on game 2, I mean, it's a 6-1 ball game at the end of the game, and you look back and you're like, okay, well, 4 of those runs were a walk or a hit by pitch, and you go to the second inning, Helfrich hit by pitch. That guy scores.
Yeah,
Thomas Jr. hit by pitch. He scores. Aloy, he gets walked. He scores. You get rid of that, man, and it's a lot different of a ball game, especially late. Like the mentality that you have going to bats, it's a lot different. It's a different ball game, but at the same time, just that second inning kind of got away from
hmm
Luke Harrison with control wise. But that's one thing that I just want to see the Texas team do is just kind of come back out and really execute the control this next weekend.
yeah. I think the control is the biggest thing that Wiener's gonna be talking to his pitchers about because it was just uncanny how many walks were coming out in real like you said with Rio Haas, it was some two strike walks that he gave up. He had the batter in the right spot, but some of Harrison's weren't particularly competitive, and that happened with a few of the pitchers this weekend. And you just can't have that against a team of Arkansas's caliber, who maybe they're not going to be ranked number 2. We'll talk about rankings coming up, but they're top 3 team in the country. I'd say pretty unanimously at this point with this one they provided. So the real turning point for me, I wanted to make sure I got the inning right, was that 5th inning where Williams just hit a double. Borba advances a third. It's second and third, and Texas is only down 3. The top of the order is coming up. Ethan Mendoza is coming up, and you have a chance to, after a horrible weekend of hitting, you haven't really scored at all, to take that Galvan home run from the inning before and then build momentum off that. Get Mendoza on, get him a single to score 2, get another good hitter on base, and Mendoza hits the ball. It's a weak ground out to shortstop, but it just felt like an opportunity that was lost. The top of the order should have been capitalizing on that you hope for from your best hitters on your team. And after that, the hitting stalled out quite a bit. They didn't score another run for the rest of the game. I think they only got 2 runners on in the eighth inning. I want to say eighth or ninth, one of the two. It was the ninth inning. I got it, but yeah, it was just a rough day for most of the bats. But it felt like right there that was the chance to potentially take back control of the series, and it didn't show up right there.
Yeah, I mean, really, and also game 2, you mentioned there was also the time where we had Casey Borba and Will Gasparino on first and second,
Yeah,
and there's an infield pop up, and we have 1 out. And this team, it's easy to say, oh well, there was going to be 2 outs anyways. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. This is a really, really good 2 out hitting team, and I can't think. I mean, I can think of a ton of times like Georgia, even Auburn, LSU,
Auburn had a few.
where we're getting like actual like 2 out rallies, and we're getting like a lot of 2 out hits. Texas A&M, and it's just you can't have that moment of you could really feel like the frustration of the like kind of and it was mainly look, I'm not trying to throw any guys under the bus, but at this point everybody knows it. Borba kind of advanced
It was
with not just a lapse in thinking, and Gasparino's like, what's going on? He moves. I love to see Jim Schlossnagle. He pulled them. Like
mhm.
I love that, and not the fact that like just pulling the guys and benching them, but really sending a message like, hey, I don't care if you're a starter. I don't care how good you are for this team. If you start, if you're not in the game, right? If your mind's not 100% in this
Mhm.
game, you don't need to be on the field. And I love to see that from Jim Schlossnagle, but at the same time, I also love to see that next day you see Casey Borba and Will Gasparino out there
Yep,
again.
great point.
And you're not punishing him. You're not going overboard on a punishment. You're just kind of sending a message saying, "Hey, some unacceptable crap just happened, and we can't be having that happen again." So hopefully, we never see that again in the season.
Yeah. And sometimes you need losses like this, and you couldn't have. I could have said that better. That was my exact take on the situation. So I think we can go over to Game 3 here, which was the bats did wake up a little bit. You saw Jalen Flores finally really
Really,
spark
the
some good
whole top
hitting
of the
there.
lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And that was something that I was ready to come into this segment talking about is hey, this top of the lineup, I'm start to ring the alarm bells because Mendoza's been a little bit iffy at leadoff recently. And then Flores really hasn't been hitting very well. You got Galvan always hitting great. Gasparino, sometimes you think the numbers are bad, and then you look over and he's still top 4 in OPS and slugging and all these stats. But it felt like specifically Mendoza and Flores weren't having the best weekends. And then Mendoza has a hit and 2 walks. He was extremely efficient, scored 2 runs. Flores had 4 RBI, two of those two from 2 home runs. Galvan got on Schussler, Gasparino, I believe, hit a home run as well. He did, yeah. So Texas scored
Almost
runs.
robbed too.
Yeah, it's oh
Like
my god, and those
close to
those I
robbing
thought
too.
he had the first one. He looked like he did, and then the announcers went home run. I was like, oh god. But
He just mistimed the jump on that one, and then
yeah,
the other one just like barely touched his glove.
grazed right over. Yeah, unfortunate. And those could have been big swings. Felt like this game had so many big swings that just didn't quite go Texas's way. And Arkansas's bats just exploded. It was the Lloyd brothers who had been giving Texas fits all weekend, but Reese Robinette had his own 2 bombs. Grubbs was all right as a starter. I'm glad he got a chance to start. This would have been the weekend to do it. He got a 3 1/3. It's feeling a little bit like it's hard to stretch him into that fourth inning, which we've been talking about with, I believe, Spencer earlier in the season. It's just maybe he just needs to pitch more in a starting situation. But he definitely looked a little banged up in the first 3 innings, and then of course the fourth inning was when Arkansas really piled on the runs. You saw the doubles and the home runs, and then that was kind of it. Burns comes in and he has an even worse appearance. Doesn't even get through 1 2/3. He gives up 5 earned runs during doing that. Some of those runs also he gave up four four grubs. So really bad performance in my opinion from Burns. He just didn't look like he had his stuff. It was just straight line. It was things that Arkansas frankly knew what was coming and they pounced on it. So by the time Texas had scored their 6 runs, it was still not enough because Arkansas was starting to pull away again.
Yeah, I mean, the Burns thing, that's just really interesting. One, I mean, that would have been the guy that I probably would have rolled with
Oh, me
as a
too. Yeah,
starter, just because you kind of want to get him in that role anyways. And then Max Grubbs, just him being in that, like, kind of like just that, there's something about that mentality of, hey, I'm coming in with like back on, like my back is against the wall. That dude just thrives in that
yeah,
situation, right? And that's honestly a rare thing to get. But when you look at Burns, man, one, I did like that he had a lot of strikeouts early on, right? He looked
yeah.
like he was having a really good day, but like you said, that fastball was a little flat. I mean, it's it's a great example of, hey, be low and everything, right? You got to have movement on that pitch
Yeah.
because these dudes they go into the batting cages, they're able to hit 100 miles an hour, right? Because they have to. You got to be able to gear up for that guy that can hit 100, especially when you got a guy that's up there that can pump 99 and burns. So
Yeah.
velo is not the issue. It's just when you get that movement with the velo, that's when pitchers can really start to get nasty. And he just didn't really have that this weekend. But I'm not that worried because I mean, baseball it's a sport of attrition. You know, you're going to fail, and for us to really kind of run into our first failure at this point in the season, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and I also felt with Grubbs, the home run he gave up was just such an uncharacteristic pitch. Like when do you ever see him loop a curveball like that? That it's just
Or Dylan Volantis, like
yeah, Volantis. Part of it felt like obviously this team hadn't given up or anything, but you got to be demoralized after the first two games, and you're getting thrown into a spot where both Grubbs and Burns had not pitched in that situation at all this year. This was pretty much a first for them because Texas has been so good. They've been rolling through games, and Fridays have been pretty simply Spencer Riojas and then Grubbs and then Volantis, or just Volantis if it needs to be that. And that's been a good formula, but you're not used to what happened. And you know, it's not going to be not to sound too baseball-y and too old head about it, but you do need to lose in baseball sometimes. You need to have some games that just don't go your way, so that when it really matters, because at the end of the day, this game mattered, but it didn't matter. You're not gonna your season's not over because this happened, no matter what people might say in our message
everything
board.
is on the table. Like the conference winning the conference is still on the table.
Yeah,
Hosting a regional still on. Well, I mean that's already getting racked up.
super regional,
Super regional still on the table, right? Like
Omaha should
everything
be
is
an
still on
NFL.
the table. So at the end of the day, yeah, it really does not matter. Like we could if we go and we accomplish everything that we want to in the rest of the season, we're gonna look back and laugh at this Arkansas series. And
Definitely.
Arkansas fans, if they want to tweet about that series, go ahead.
I will say part of me this weekend did have some suspicions coming in about like, was this really the number one team? Because obviously on paper, like everything resume wise, it was the number one team. There was no questioning that. But was the offense going to be good enough to be the favored team going into Omaha or the regionals or whatever? Or what was the pitching staff really this good? And I still think the pitching staff is definitely this good. It's even with all these terrible numbers that came out of this weekend, they're still number one in top five in a lot of important stats. Still number one in the SEC and ERA, but the bats are definitely a bit of a concern heading into the end of the year, and Baloo is going to be a huge addition. But is Flores going to be a positive player in the postseason? Are you going to see Gasparino not striking out too much? How deep can the order go? Is Williams and Farmer still going to be plus hitters this late into the season? Rodriguez, what is he? He had a pretty good weekend, but nothing crazy. So I do think that the formula for Texas to win is still very much there. It's elite pitching, get you through 7 innings where you're ahead. The clutch hitting can come up and get you insurance in the end, and then you've got maybe the best closer in all of college baseball to show up in Dylan Volantis. But I'm not sure how much you can say they're the number one team in the nation purely as I'm the most confident they're going to win the national championship. But we can talk about rankings and analytics later in the show. And I don't know what your take is on what I just said, but yeah, I'm just not. I'm thinking some of my questions got a little bit more answers than I thought they would.
Yeah, I mean it's. I'm still. I don't know. Like as far as like teams go, Texas. It like if I were to put a list of like four teams together that I think probably have the best shot to win the national championship, it's Texas, North Carolina, Florida State, Arkansas. Those are my four teams. I'm not really worried about Texas because we haven't seen. I wish I sent Homer the graph for this, but we really haven't walked. We've been really consistent with how much we walk teams, and if we avoid the walks, he might be able to pull this one up. I put out a tweet that some people were, saying that this is like me, coping for a loss, but like,
Yeah,
and I'm
definitely
like,
go
I
blue.
have it in bold that we got our ass kicked. Like, what are you talking about? But I mean, if you just avoid giving up those walks, then man, it's a lot closer game. I mean,
Okay.
you're talking about Arkansas only has 2 runs on game two. That's a 1-2 ball game that didn't score from walks. Uh, the last game, it would have been a 7-7 ball game. 6 of their 13 runs scored from walks.
Yep.
It's if you can limit the walks, you can and yeah, here it is. If you can limit the walks, man, you can just like this team is in it. And it's a situation where maybe there's a different mentality with the bats and maybe Texas walks out with having just lost the first game. And we've seen them respond just like they have all year with the other two games.
Yep.
But at the same time, like you mentioned earlier, I'm almost kind of glad this has happened because it's like, and Homer will kind of get this because I'm not sure if I'm spoiling some of the the secret sauce that was made in the last season, but he may or may not have been happy when we lost the game so that we could so that he could actually get some like serious like work done on like being judgmental about this team and
Yeah.
actually like instead of just saying oh yeah this is a really good team blah 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 blah. Like Max Weiner can actually go out there and say I get to coach today, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like I get to
Fix some
yell at some
things.
dudes. So you get
Yeah.
to remind some dudes, it's not just having to temper expectations and all that stuff. It's a different level of coaching going on. They get to actually do it. But another guy that really stood out to me is Jonah Williams, man. That dude can fly. Like
Man,
that you want to
he's a
talk
ball
about
player.
that like they were glazing him. Kyle it's funny to hear Kyle Peterson call Ravage glazing it, but 100% deserved. I mean, that dude, there's a foul ball that like I'm like, most people aren't within 10 feet of that foul ball.
Yeah.
And Jonah Williams is waiting on the damn thing at the edge of the fence, like watching it go 4 rows back. So that's a dude that I think you saw multiple times where like he should have called like when he went to center field, should have called off Flores. Flores kind of had to go
Yeah.
too far
On
into
play.
center. Uh there was a time where Will Gasparino, he probably, Will Gasparino's drifting over too much, and he's like, you can tell Will Gasparino's waiting for uh, Williams to call the ball off. But once he gets his confidence, man, I'm that dude. We saw him. He had a really nice double in the game. Obviously, in the game that we were doing nothing into.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you hate and love to see that, but he was doing really well. Not really well, but he did all right versus a really good pitching staff. It's just for a dude that's 17 years old out there, it's not normal to watch a guy, step in like it's real like they were saying it was like really sinking in. It's like this dude's supposed to be at prom right now. he's
I did
he's in
notice that when
Arkansas
they
and
talked
he's supposed to be at prom.
There's something about 17-year-old Williams this year in college sports that are just infatuating to the viewer.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna take a quick break here. Gonna hear from Laura Baker, and we'll be right back with the future of Texas baseball.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Well, despite our tone, this Texas team is still 19-5 in the SEC. They've only dropped 8 games on the year. 3 of them just coming from one series. A lot of these Tuesday games. So Texas is fine. We're going to talk about rankings later, but first we got Florida, who first let's pay our respects to Lamar. I wonder how many Kendrick memes are going to show up on the
Well,
scoreboard.
hey, last midweek game of the year.
Yeah, right. I'm not able to go because I have some graduation stuff going on. I graduate this week, by the way, guys. Just a little shout out to myself.
Congratulations.
But yeah, I won't be able to go to that, which sucks. You'd like to go to the final midweek game of the year, but yeah, last one. It's on Tuesday against Lamar. Hopefully, Texas is just unfortunately for Lamar, they got to face the Texas post sweep, who's just going to annihilate them in theory. But see Bing, maybe see Flores pitch, but this Florida series is of course important because Texas's magic number is 5 still in the SEC. It was the same last week because they lost all these games, but every Arkansas loss gets Texas that much closer to the SEC championship. Every Texas win gets them closer. You win 5 out of your last 6, which is very possible. Florida and Oklahoma, you're just the SEC champions, and that's where you're at. You win 4, but Arkansas, loses to either of Tennessee or LSU. Even one game, they drop one game. you win it as Texas. So they're still very much in the lead. They're in a really good spot. They're in the driver's seat, but it's a little less easy than it was a few days ago. Arkansas's got a much harder schedule, as I've said, because Florida is a good team. They've been hot. They're one of the teams that have been on the uptick in the SEC, but still a bottom 8 team in the conference. Not a true star-studded team like Arkansas that comes in. But what's the scouting report for a team like this that Texas really needs to win after this Arkansas series?
I mean, honestly, you look at the numbers here, and for me, aside from the pitching staff, their pitching staff, they get a lot of strikeouts. That's one thing that stands out to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost the inverse of Texas, right? Like they're top 5 in strikeouts per 9, but they're in the 50s to like 80s through the rest of the way. But like Texas, we're top 5 in opponent batting average, earned run average, walks, hits. But we're not getting a lot of strikeouts. So this is a staff that I think the Texas bats can get to. But at the same time, we've seen some strikeouts, and you mentioned Will Gasparino striking out a lot. I mean, this is going to be a really big game for guys like Will Gasparino, Tommy Farmer, to not have a lot of swing and miss, and to cut down the strikeouts. That the Florida team, and they can hit, man. Good batting average, good on base percentage. They get a lot of hits, and they hit the ball out a lot too. So, I mean, and specifically looking at the offensive stats, it's not to the level, right? But this weekend kind of reminds me a little bit of like an Arkansas junior. This is a team that early on in the year, they were like a top 5 team, definitely top 10. They were winning a lot of games early on, and then they hit SEC play, and then they just fell like a rock. But they've been winning some games lately and winning some really good series. So it'll be interesting. I mean, this Florida team is coming in a lot hotter than they were a couple weeks ago.
Well, literally a month ago, they lose a series to Vanderbilt and gets swept. Their offense really doesn't show up. But then Tuesday, they go and beat Florida State, who was a top 10 team at the time. They sweep Missouri, which everyone does at this point. Then they win series against Mississippi State. Arkansas destroys South Carolina this weekend. So they've won 4 of their last series, and they've done some in pretty dominant fashion, beating Arkansas, something Texas couldn't do. So it does seem like they're going to be without one of their better hitters, Colby Shelton, an infielder, an upperclassman who's one of their really top bats, which makes their lineup a little bit less deep. They've got some Tommy Farmers and Jaden Duplantiers. That's maybe disrespectful to Farmer, but they've got some guys at the bottom of the order that strike out a lot and don't get on base enough. That maybe can be exploitable for this Texas staff. But like you said, they've got some real hitters. They've got some guys who, I mean, you can see that number 4 number for batting average, who get on base a ton, and they're really good at just getting around the bases. They have some athletes in the team. I do think Texas, like you said, where you can win this series is the bats outdoing their pitching in comparison to what's going on with the other side of things, because 65 in WHIP is not terrible, but when Texas is number 7 coming out with that, you're getting 0.24 more per inning. It's really favoring Texas to get on base that much. If the walks even just get back to a neutral number, regress back to the mean a little bit, they could still, they still walk 10, 11 guys this weekend. It's not great, but at least it's a lot better than what it was last weekend. And you're in so much of a better place. Say it again.
31 walks. Yeah.
Yeah, right. if you're even at 16 between the walks,
if you can just cut it down to half, which would be almost the season high for an SEC series for Texas. But man, like looking at this graph too, like this is the funny thing that I like when you see. I know there was some scuttlebutt about I think Chris Phillips from not Locked On SEC, but SEC Unfiltered. He's every week he's going against the Horns, right? He's got his video, and he said I didn't have a problem with him going against the Horns because I kind of like that, but at the same time, he said that this team, this Texas team, they've been hot. Excuse me, we haven't been hot, not at all. Look, you see these offensive numbers right here on the season. Yeah, I mean this team is. I think this Texas team is really. They might be the most dangerous team in all of college baseball because they are playing like a number. Now, obviously, we're coming off of a sweep, right? But overall, they've been playing like a number 1 team, and that's without hot bats. Yeah. If you start adding in some hot bats into the equation, man, I mean, you just combine hot bats with a Ruger Riojas, so Luke Harrison, a Dylan Valentis, some Max Grubbs, and so that's going to be a bad equation
Not
for
going to
some
want to face
other
that lineup.
for some teams that have to go to the opposing dugout. So, just I mean, I really want to see this Texas team really start to heat up this weekend.
Yeah, one of my friends was mentioning that exact same video because he completely disagreed with the idea that Texas was hot. Like, coming into the A&M series, A&M was hot and banged up all year. Rodriguez can only hit from one side of the bat. Mendoza goes out. I don't know if you can still hear me. I think Baloo's been hurt. Spencer's hurt and out for the year. Everywhere has been injured. It feels like for Texas, even if they're still playing. So this team is going to get healthier, and they're gonna hit a spot where they're gonna really start swinging the bat. They're gonna have an explosive game, and suddenly all these doubts about the team's offense may just go away for us. But for now, the numbers aren't pretty for the batting averages and the on bases, and of course, 283 is not a bad batting average, but it's college baseball. This is including games against some of the bad teams in the country. So these numbers can easily go up with a weekend or two against Florida and Oklahoma that they just take over and really get on some bad pitching, which is exactly what you're hoping for as a Texas fan.
At the end of the day, also these are just numbers, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's like there's a reason why coaches call people that love stats stat rats, right? At the
Yeah,
end of the
maybe.
day, is did you win or lose? Everything else is just filler.
And I think that takes us right into the rankings because this is the first time in a while that we've actually had any sort of, ooh, is there going to be any change? Is there going to be some drops? So, of course, D1 baseball is actually the ones kept Texas at number one, which is pretty interesting. It's one that people have been harping on for not liking Texas, but perfect game drops them as far as three. USA Today at one, Athletic, Baseball America number two. What helped Texas was a lot of the teams right behind them these past 2 weeks, the ones that were in the 2 through 10 area, really hadn't been winning. And Arkansas, when they played them, were D1 Baseball's number 11 team. So is one series going to jump you up 10 spots ahead of Texas, or are the teams behind Texas really warranted? I think I still would have ranked Texas number one if you're really just looking at the overall resume. But I'd love to hear your take on if this was the number one resume team for you.
I mean, it was a real. I'm just gonna go ahead and say yes. I do think that number one is the right ranking because when you look at what's happened, right? Arkansas was at 11. You put yourself in a situation where you're D1 and you're like, okay. I mean, and now they haven't overreacted, right? But you don't want to be overreactionary and just say, okay, they beat Texas at home after they were 3-9 or 3-6 in the past 12, 3-6 in the past 9 SEC games going into the
Yeah.
Texas series. And you look at that, that's not a top 5, top 10 team right there. And they were being moved down. They made it to 11, and you can't bump Arkansas up to number one. Just jump all Florida
Okay.
State, who
Yeah.
took the series versus Clemson. Uh, like that was really, I think Clemson, if Clemson had took the series versus Florida State, they're the easy number one seed to move in, or number one team to move up above Texas. But you look at LSU. LSU took the series, or they lost it. Yeah, they lost the series.
Hmm.
They almost had the series. I kind of
Yeah.
turned the game off, and I remind myself about that. But you get the Georgia team. It's the teams that they wanted to move over Texas. You can't you can't move Georgia over Texas when Texas swept Georgia. Now, granted, that is at home, but I mean, I think at this point, when you start to get into that, like people are going to start to make too much of a home and away argument,
Yeah.
and it just comes down to did the team beat that team? If it comes down to potentially ranking Texas and Arkansas, and we're right next to each other, guess what? Arkansas is going to be above Texas because
Hmm.
they swept Texas. That's just how it works. But I mean, it was just it was the perfect storm of teams losing and winning for Texas to stay right at
Yeah.
number one.
Well, I get the of course I get D1 baseball and USA Today. It's just keeping them there. The Athletic put Arkansas ahead of Texas, and I think they had Arkansas ranked higher. I understand that idea, and the method perfect game maybe just doesn't think they're the number one team anymore. After that, you drop them 2 spots. The really one that irks me a bit was Baseball America's poll because you put Georgia above Texas as the number one team, and like you said, Texas has swept Georgia obviously at home, but it's the same thing that Texas just had happen on the road. Even if you think that there's home field advantage, give them one game, they still lose the series. And Georgia just played. Yeah, they came off a sweep. This is one of the closest series Missouri has had in the SEC. They were within 2 and 3 runs in 2 of these games against Missouri, and like that's not a dominant sweep. It's not like some team that's they're red hot. They just beat Missouri. That's something that they just kind of barely won. So they've won some series, but they just gotten swept by Vanderbilt too before, and they dropped a game to I think it was Oklahoma the series before that. It's just overall Texas has a better resume. They have the head to head. They haven't been worse in the last apart from literally this last weekend. They haven't been a worse team. I just don't get why Georgia's number one on Baseball Americas. The other ones I understand.
Yeah, and I mean, like, here's the other thing too is when you look at the top 25, especially for D1 baseball, there's Texas, Florida State at 2, LSU at 3, North Carolina at 4, Oregon at 5, Georgia at 6, Arkansas 7, Auburn at 8,
Mhm.
and I'll just stop right there. Texas has 3 series wins against some of those teams,
Yeah.
against the top 8 teams, and you're going to be hard pressed to find another team that has those, can make that claim.
Yeah.
So it's just one of these things. Like, look, the haters are going to hate, and it is what it is. You just got to ignore them. But I think that honestly, too, like this shows that we talked about this earlier in the year, and we kind of started talking about it less. Man, we really had to earn every last little bit of getting into the top 5, getting down to the number 1.
Yep.
And it is, as much as I like personally, a little bit of a hot take. I would have been okay with them losing number one, because number 1 seeds historically don't do well in Omaha, right? They
It's a fair.
historically don't do well in the NCAA tournament. Ask Arkansas how that went for them. Now that also might have been hanging a certain banner, but that's for another story, another day. But it was nice to see, like, services like D1 Baseball, USA Today, which is a bunch of coaches. It was nice to see them, say, you know what, we're going to stick with number 1. And not only that, like, you got number 2, number 3. I was legitimately worried. I was like, man, are we going to see some like overreaction thing where like some rankings put Texas down to, like 7, or put
Yeah.
Texas into like 11 or like 12? Because in my opinion, like I thought that was completely on the table.
I hadn't even thought about that. That would have been quite a shock if you get that low. And then yeah, we have some of the extra ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
64 analytics.
these are more the analytical ones.
Yeah, and still 1 and 2 in all of these ones. Are RPI, they've been number 2. I think they've either been 1 or 2 a lot of the year, and I think Georgia loves, or RPI loves Georgia. 64 analytics, which has been one we talked about. That's more of a holistic analytics idea. Still had Texas at number 1 there. So yeah, I will give Kendall Rogers his flowers. A guy who I know a lot of people don't love, but he was very positive about Texas and brought out numbers like, hey, they're still a top 2 RPI team. They still are best in quad 1 of any team in the country. Still the best in quad 1 and 2. This team is fine. They're still a very highly ranked team. And I think maybe Connor, if you want to pull up the SEC race, because that's really what matters at the end of the day is winning this SEC regular season title. Because obviously these numbers are, it was Texas and some teams here, and now it's Texas and Arkansas right here. But poor Missouri down at the bottom, poor South Carolina. But there are some very obvious clumps of how this shows out, where Texas and Arkansas are at the top. Like we said, that magic number is 5. Texas gets that 24 win mark. That they've gotten it. If Arkansas loses 1 game, it's a 23 win mark, 22, et cetera, et cetera. So it's those 2 teams very much at the top. And then that big clump of LSU, Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, and Auburn, all just good teams. Like you see here that Georgia's tied for 4th in the SEC and they're number 1 team. Either way, there's a lot of clumps. These teams in the clumps, apart from LSU, I don't even think can physically get to that number 1 seed. So
No, they can't. It's LSU and Arkansas at this point.
so
Those are the only two. And LSU, I believe,
they need a miracle.
would have to lose every game. LSU would have to win every game to win.
Yeah. And
so Arkansas is really the only realistic threat.
And Arkansas has a tiebreaker over Texas because it is head-to-head in case of a tie. So Texas really, that 2-game lead is just 2 games. But, we've talked about where it's going for the rest of the way. Tennessee and LSU do play Arkansas at the end of the year. It's one of the things that's helped Arkansas is the schedule's been a little bit easier in terms of front-loaded versus back-loaded, whereas Texas is facing a Florida team that we've talked about. It's hot, but you can see that they're right there with Kentucky and A&M, Mississippi State, who Texas has already played, won 8 of those 9 games, and then you're going to play against a better Oklahoma team who's, it's at Oklahoma, but it feels like this could be another sweep weekend for Texas, and if they do that, then they are right there to winning the SEC regular season title, which the first season would just be an awesome experience for all the Texas fans involved.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, because Arkansas would have to almost go undefeated. No, they would have to go undefeated, I think,
Pretty
to
much, yeah.
to pretty much secure it, and that's against LSU and Tennessee. And those are those are the two next hardest teams to beat in the conference besides
Yep.
Georgia. So it's just it does feel like if Texas can just win these next two series, forget about a sweep, right? Just win the next two series. I mean, and how cool would this be for year one in the SEC? Such a prestigious conference that this is. Because this is a hard conference to win. I know. Look. If it happens, right, Texas fans are going to immediately go to Twitter and they're going to start talking about the softest conference, right? Like, does the E stand for easy in the SEC, right? Like things like that. But
Super easy conference.
man, it's just if we're able to win the conference in our first year in the SEC, what a special season. And I think too, it just cements that Texas baseball, in my opinion, the only other school that can even talk about themselves in the same light as college baseball prestige is LSU. USC could be in that boat, but they don't care about sports enough over there at Southern California.
Not
So
anymore.
just a little personal sidebar. I hate that. Like, I wish that USC would put a lot of money into USC baseball, because that's just one of those old school historical programs that it really means a lot to college baseball, and it hasn't meant worth a shit since the year 2000. So it'd be cool to see them, do well in baseball at some point. But as of right now, it's Texas and then LSU, and then everybody else.
And that's, you're already seeing the recruiting rankings really show that with how Sauce has done already for the 26 and 27 classes. I think that might wrap us up here, Nash. Been a long episode, a lot of talk about a rough series, but of course, still 1-2 and pretty much everything. This is still one of the better teams in college baseball. I'm going to quit my yapping. I'm going to give you for the first time in a while any last words, and then we'll sign out for the day.
My last words would be looking at the DSR. I know you talked about earlier that Georgia, Georgia's got that lead on the RPI. Dartmouth just keeps on dragging us down there. DSR, we're number 2 to Arkansas, but the cool thing about that is, I mean, Arkansas's at 1,661 points. Texas at 1,660 points. The next team is 1,613. So it's a very small gap between 1 and 2. And the funny thing is Arkansas, their best win is against Texas, and our worst loss is obviously against Arkansas.
Yep.
Same game 1, the 0-9. Would have loved to avoid
that
one, but I mean, you just look that this Texas team, they're in the position to do everything they want to, and going into the season, and we're getting into the territory where we might get Max Blue back pretty soon. This is strap in. It's going to be a fun end of the season.
Yeah, and of course these last 2 series, they're going to be away to Oklahoma, but after that, there's going to be baseball in Austin this postseason, which is always
senior weekend tonight, or senior weekend this weekend.
Yeah, so big weekend for Texas baseball, big weekend for myself, not to shout myself out. But just a lot going on with Texas baseball. But that's going to be all from us here at Inside Texas Baseball. I've been Evan, Nash alongside me as always. Thank y'all for watching so much. We'll see you next week.
Okay.